Well, welcome everyone to season 1, episode 17 of Bridging Generations with Howard Snooks. I am Howard Snooks, and this is my guest today, Zoya Voronovich.
Hello.
Now, I always start with a dad joke, and then I'm going to turn the mic over to Zoya to say a little bit about what I think is one of the most fascinating stories I've heard of a person's trajectory, because it's going to be surprising, I think. But here's my dad joke. If I owned a bookstore, I would make all the mystery books hard to find. Okay, take it from there, Zoya.
I love that you started with a bookstore
See,
joke.
I read that in your biography that you love books and you belong to 2 book clubs and stuff. So
I do love reading so much. I think it's like my life is like dream life. I read, I run, I drink coffee, and I fight evil.
and you fight evil.
Wouldn't that be great?
Whoa.
Great life.
Whoa.
Yeah, I do have kind of a crazy story, right? So I was actually born in Moscow in Russia and then immigrated to Boulder around 93 when my father, who was an oceanographer, he ended up coming here on a fellowship and we stayed. And he actually worked for the federal government for like 25 years, which was his
Wow.
dream.
Where did you grow up?
In Boulder.
An
So
oceanographer? Oh, well,
you know,
sure,
because
sure,
of the labs here,
sure,
right?
sure,
The
sure,
NOAA
sure,
labs. And
sure.
so I went to high school in Boulder and I went to Casey for middle school for about a year and then 2 years at Angevine in Lafayette
Yeah.
and then Fairview for high school, CU Boulder for undergrad, where we were just talking about, I spent some time at Radio 1190. This kind of feels like,
No, we want to get back to that at
yeah,
some point
this
because that's
kind of
really
feels
interesting.
like being
Yeah.
back in at the
Right,
radio station.
right.
Um, I worked in IT management in the area for some companies that are, Colorado grown, like Wild Oats Markets. If you're from back in the day, you probably remember them.
Yes, I do.
And then I actually worked for Chipotle, which also started here with some Boulder High grads. And then spent some time at Agrium, which is was a big agro business company out of Canada, and they had a retail arm here. Then I went to medical school and in Pittsburgh, studied. I was trained as a neurosurgeon and worked in that up until about 2 months ago when I decided to pivot again into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, this was like a shift in the trajectory. I wasn't expecting this when I asked Zoe. She says, "Well, did you know that I've retired?" I said, "Well,
Big pivot again.
a big pivot."
And along that time, I also got married. I had a kid and is now going to college, which is very exciting to study entomology at UC Davis. So lots of transitions for me at this point.
They are remarkable. So you went to Casey. I used to be a school social worker at Casey.
When?
Well, this was back in 1978.
Okay.
So it's
So
probably a little bit
my
before
time.
your time. Like, isn't that kind of like 50 years ago almost?
I guess
But
so.
it was Casey was the hip junior high to go to at the time. So, and then my kids went to Fairview High School. They graduated in 2001 and 2003.
I was just thinking about Fairview. I graduated in 99. So we probably,
My son Joe, he was like a sophomore when you
yeah, so we
yeah,
probably
you
overlapped a little bit.
crossed in the hallway.
I was just thinking about my high school teacher at Fairview, Mara Radis.
Uh-huh.
She was the IB English teacher, and she was just amazing. Like, she's the one who taught me to love reading and books. And she was one of these teachers who always had like a line of students outside her door, wanting to talk to her about papers and life and drama. And she had this like tiny office. I mean, they literally kept her in the closet. And there were like, I'm not kidding you, stacks of papers like up to the ceiling. Like, we were never sure that she graded anything, but she was beloved and so adored.
Oh, okay. So
It's amazing.
since Bridging Generations is the theme, you started off with a good one. Mara is her name.
Mm-hmm.
Moira.
Mara.
Mara.
Mara Radis.
Well, what do you think it is that made her beloved? Because I know there's this thing that some teachers have, and it's just so impressive. But what could you identify it?
I think it was her accessibility and like she wasn't judgmental, right? When we talk about
Mhm.
therapy, right, and medicine, we talk about non-judgmental stance. I think she had that.
Mhm.
So I think she was open to having a conversation. And it's not that she wouldn't give you advice.
Mhm.
She would,
Mhm.
but she was there and she was available. And I think it was that she didn't judge, you know?
Okay. So the people who are more rigid in their
Hmm.
generational distinctions, they think that that means that the students don't really respect an older person who is so accessible because they consider themselves to be peers in some ways. Now, I've heard this as a criticism. I'm not saying
Hmm.
that I believe that. I'm just curious to know, uh, like maybe that's why she was in the closet instead of having a bigger.
She was in the she was like the aunt, like
Uh-huh.
I wasn't close to, my aunt, but like she's like the aunt I would have loved to have,
Gotcha.
you know, like not quite parental, but there for guidance.
Did she have good ideas about books? Like, did she have
Oh
any
my
good
God.
choices and stuff?
Amazing. We
Yeah.
read amazing books in her class. I mean, actually, whenever Alex would say like, "Oh, I'm just not loving this English class." And I was like, "Because you guys are reading stuff that you're not responding to." And I remembered
Yeah.
her selections. We read amazing work from the Latin American canon. And we spent a lot of time reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Pablo Neruda and Juan Rulfo. It was just incredible. And she really tapped into everyone's passions as they related to the books. So, for example, I had a friend, Dylan Burns, who's a professor now in Germany, and he was very into history and he loved Latin American history. And so she had him give us a lecture on Latin American history as it related to these books so that we would have a better context. And then I was just had like so in love with Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And she even had me put together a little lecture on him to give to her like lower level classes. So as a student, I could speak to other students about my passion. And then
Hey, that's like medical school. See one, do one, teach
teach
one.
one, right? the One of the things I really remember from her class is one of the students wanted to write about the F word in 100 Years of Solitude, keeping it clean for your podcast. And this would be an essay that was submitted to the International Baccalaureate organization as
Mhm.
part of his portfolio. And she let him do it. She said, like, make it academic, you know, go
Yeah,
for it. I thought that was incredible.
that really is. Well, I'm very impressed. Have you run into her? Do you know where?
No, but I honestly, like, I actually kind of tried to reconnect with her. I think she had like an account on LinkedIn, but she's retired and I don't think she's checking her LinkedIn very often. But I just thought that was
Yeah.
like one of the teachers who really stood out for me. And then actually another one is, do you remember Mr. Snowden from Casey?
Mr. Snowden?
Oh, he was this gym teacher. He was
Oh,
so
oh, oh,
tough.
oh, oh, yes, I
Do
do.
you remember
Yes, I
him?
remember him.
So I was not athletic at all growing up. Like my parents kind of didn't really encourage sports. And I was all like, they put me in like tennis classes and I'd quit after like 2 weeks. So I remember getting to the US, I'm starting sixth grade. Like I show up in October, so everyone's kind of known each other for a few months. And I'm like the new weird Russian kid with like the weird clothes, the whole deal. And
Mhm.
I get put in this gym class when like, I think it's actually in seventh grade because I have to take extra like language classes in sixth grade. And with Mr. Snowden, and I am terrified. I mean, he was this, big, muscular guy, right? Like he had so much presence and he would have these workouts once a week. I think he called them sweat outs. And they were just like these crazy, like you were sprinting and doing push-ups and this and that. It's like hit on steroids, And I could barely run. And I just remember trying to like keep up with these workouts and like never quite making it. And it was, but gosh, what a presence. Because then he would sit us all in like a half circle and give us a little, like a little life talk, like a dad talk. And it really like, he'd talk about, I don't know, life and drugs and, doing the right thing, that kind of deal. I just remember how much presence he had. And like, here I am, whatever, 30 some years later, still thinking about this guy. I looked him up and I saw that he had unfortunately passed away, but like it sounds like left quite a legacy. You know, a lot of
Well,
people were writing on his like
I,
obituary wall and that kind of
well,
thing.
I was thinking you were going to say, and then here was a bad teacher I had, because he made fun of me. So because you painted a pretty awkward,
Hmm.
scene, but he turned out to be a great guy.
Yeah.
That's real. I love that story. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just tell a little story about my early education in Durango. I grew up in Durango. And from second grade to fifth grade, I was always the teacher's pet. Every teacher just loved me. I was the greatest. And then my sixth grade teacher, she, for some reason, had just the opposite reaction. She was actually literally abusive
Oh
to
my
me. And
gosh,
she would like,
Howard.
I remember the veins would stand out on her neck, and she looked like Cruella de Vil. Do you remember? Because she wore lots of eye makeup and she had eyebrows that had painted on, and
Uh-huh.
bright red
Oh,
lipstick.
wow.
Just this witch. And she would just like go like this. And I was too good of a kid, really. I should have, that was really terrible. But it turned out the day after we were out of sixth grade, I was going, oh, I made it through. She had a seizure, went into the hospital, and she had this, orange-sized brain tumor, and she ended up dying.
Wow.
So I actually think that probably there was some connection between
Connection
this.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Though, it's unfortunate. I don't want to get into specifics, but I've certainly had, you know, people in those positions that are really, like you said, downright abusive. And it sort of makes you wonder, like, why would you even be attracted to that role of teaching and developing? Because, of course, it's easy to develop someone who is naturally gifted or great, but it takes a lot to build someone who is not.
You're talking
Yeah.
about why education schools let students continue who have these tendencies. Of course, maybe they didn't show up. Like, I think that she had a traumatic life, and she might have been a really good teacher at one
Hmm.
point.
Yeah.
But there are certain people who should not be teachers, I think. There are certain people who should not be doctors. There are certain people who should not be social workers. I'm a social worker, and I've
Hmm.
seen some pretty mean social workers in my life, which just seems like, how could that be?
What is the draw, right? Yeah. Or maybe what happens along the way.
Yeah, getting bitter, getting cynical,
Mhm.
those sorts of getting beat down, kind of, in a way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to talk to you about being a neurosurgeon at some point, because even though you've retired, I think it's really interesting. But how about talking about being the radio announcer?
Oh, that was wild. So at CU Boulder, they have a college radio station called Radio 1190 AM. And when I actually went to college in the, early 2000s, it was kind of a big deal in
Yeah,
in Denver, like in the independent music scene, that
yeah,
was the place to
definitely.
be. And they had really focused on independent music rather than, corporate radio. Had shows that were focused on different genres that
Hmm.
weren't represented. Like, for example, there was a really popular hip hop show on Saturdays. I don't know, that might still be going for all I know.
Yeah.
And they would have, different genres. And like, I remember there was a French show that I would periodically have to cover, like French music.
Oh, really?
And I think students could pitch their own ideas. They could say, "Oh, I'm into this. Let's
Hmm.
do this show." And some shows had continued and passed on from DJ to DJ with,
Yeah.
various amounts of success. But it was pretty neat. I wouldn't say I was particularly great at it, but it was because sometimes my friends would show up and they would just want to participate, and we would do this kind of thing where we would just talk about dialogue about music or a week in our lives, because it was like in the middle of the night on a Friday, like no one was listening. And once in a while I'd get in trouble with the traffic director because she's like, "I tuned in, you didn't do your ID on time." And I'd
Oh,
be like,
wow.
"Oh, she listened."
Well, how did you end up applying for this job?
You know, it I think it was kind of a circuitous route. Like, I think I knew someone through the business school who was involved with management at the radio station. And somehow I volunteered to do some fundraising for them. This was actually kind of fun. I got to walk around to local businesses and say, hey, 1190 is doing our pledge drive. And would you like to donate something for the pledge drive? Which at that point, like, all kinds of businesses wanted to donate things. And I mean, we went to things that were focused, alternative clothing stores, music stores, like Wax Tracks and, Twist and Shout were still around, which I love.
Sure.
And then after that, I think I did some other things around there. And then they were like, hey, do you want to like take over a show and help us out? And so it was.
Well, you've got a way about you, I think, that sort of draws people. And then they go, what an interest, or, there's just something very positive about your vibe, I think. And so people think about you for doing things. So
Thanks.
I think that's really neat.
I would love to get your generational perspective on music. As I think I look back on those days and I love like dark electronic music. I'm still going clubbing, Howard. I just got tickets to another show for my favorite new band from San Diego, Mad Black. They're coming back to Denver. And for me, it's so interesting because Alex listens to some of the same music that I do. So that's what I'm so sad about him going away to college, because where's my concert buddy?
Oh man, this will be a challenge, won't it? Yeah, there's no sugarcoating it. This is going to be rough.
Right?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about music. I grew up in Durango, and there were a couple of radio stations, but it was mostly like Patty Page, or they would play Johnny Cash because it's sort of a country.
He's beloved by everyone.
Yeah. But they did have at sunset this radio station from Oklahoma City would go up to 50,000 watts or something. And so we could get it in Durango. It was called KOMA. And so everybody in Durango just waited for sunset because then we could listen. It was rock and roll. It was like 60s rock and roll. Respect, I remember, was one. I don't know. The Rolling Stones were just getting big. The Beatles were just beginning. So it was it was a really exciting time for music. And then if we ever got to go to Denver, my parents would sometimes bring us to Denver so we could actually see what a city looked like go to a restaurant with white tablecloths or, stuff like that, just so we sort of knew what it was like. And when you get to about Fairplay, just a little bit past, then you could listen to KIMN and 950 on your AM radio dial. And boy, that was just like, this is actually Colorado rock and roll, not Oklahoma rock and roll. So that was always cool to get to do that. And then I went to university at CSU. And this was right in the late 60s. So you know what was happening. The psychedelic scene was happening.
Yeah.
And the big radio station was KTCL. And it was a Denver station, but we got it in Fort Collins. And it was just like, Jefferson Airplane, Quicksilver Messenger Service, that sort of scene, which I still really like.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I moved back I went to grad school back east. Then I moved back to Durango for a few years, came back and moved to Boulder. I actually had spent 1 year in an internship in Boulder in 74, 75. And the radio station KBCO.
KBCO, yeah.
So that's still on. But it was, I still like KBCO. They play a lot of oldies music that I like. But it's not, I wouldn't call it cutting edge anymore. It used to be cutting edge. It was like the coolest songs you could find were on KBCO. So that was kind of my trajectory here in terms of my early music.
The other radio station, remember, they're still around, Kuvo, the jazz station from Denver.
Oh, KUVO.
Yeah.
Yeah, they call it KUVO.
Oh, yeah. That's a great station.
So that is a good station.
Yeah. And they're still transmitting out of 5 Points, right? I think that's where they're.
So.
Yeah.
I think
that's a fantastic station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So in electronic music, the only, I've gone to Spain a couple of times because I have a friend who lives there. And so this friend of mine kind of does electronic music. So I've been to some of those electronic scenes in Spain, which is like a whole scene. They don't start until 11 or 12 at night. They go till 5 in the morning. And it's like, you know, but
That's
it's,
me.
yeah, it's really,
I'm out
really,
there like
really it's super fun. So I do like electronic music, and I become a fan of country music actually in my, so this might be a generational thing. There's some, like, even people that I don't think are probably such great people, like what's his name, Wallen. Um, I just think he's got the greatest songs. Sometimes there's this woman named Ellie something for uh, Choosing Texas is this song
mm,
where she has this boyfriend that she's lured to Tennessee, and then she thinks is safe. So she goes back to Texas with him. And then I can tell she's from Texas. I can tell. And his eyes get turned away from
I
her. So then she's drinking Jack all by herself. Why did I ever take him back to Texas? Because, but there's something really cool about some of that country music, I think.
yeah. I never really got deep in country, but there's definitely a few. I mean, Johnny Cash, like you have to love
Oh,
Johnny
I have
Cash.
some recommendation. Tracy Nelson and Mother Earth.
Okay.
And that was from the late 60s. She has this wonderful bluesy voice, and it's a mixture of country and blues. But Tracy Nelson sings country. It's one of the finest albums I've ever heard. For people that don't like, her genre is broader than just country music,
Uh-huh.
I'd say. But I just have always, when I listen to that album still, I just think it's the greatest album.
Are you a Tom Waits fan at all?
Tom Waits?
Waits?
Oh, his voice.
Oh, I still remember the first time I heard Dancing Matilda. It was do you remember the Bookend, the little coffee shop next to
Yeah,
Boulder
sure,
Bookstore?
sure.
I was there in the evening because they were, still staying open kind of late, and they were playing Small Change like at top volume, and I was just blown away. And it was so outside of what I was typically listening to
Hmm.
at that point, but I just love Tom Waits. I think within the last couple of weeks, I definitely put on Small Change. Yeah, it's just a great album. And
Oh,
and
yeah, Tom Waits.
he's really persisted, right, for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
He has died now, I think, hasn't he?
I
He
don't
passed, I think.
did he pass away recently? Yeah.
Yeah,
Because he was still putting things out until, you
not
know,
long ago.
not long ago, and I love his development, right? He actually becomes more edgy, more avant-garde, right, as time goes on, like, comparing, Small Change to, um, like, Mule
Hmm.
Variations, which is
Hmm.
so, dark and
Wow.
yeah.
I was just painting my basement, so I got turned on Spotify to an old Judy Collins album, and she's a Denver girl,
Yeah?
and I hadn't heard that song for 45 years, that album for 45 years probably. Uh, the the what was one of them? That's No Way to Say Goodbye. Like, she has a very her songs are always pretty tragic, it seems like to me.
Yeah.
She was like who Stephen Stills, he wrote Sweet for Judy Blue Eyes to her because she
Oh,
had turned him down. He wanted her first.
I'll have to go back and listen to her. It's interesting you mentioned Spotify. Speaking of generations,
Yeah,
I cannot convince my parents to try it
really.
because I thought, gosh, you have this incredible catalog of music, right? And, let's leave the ethics of the artists not being properly
Right,
paid. But in
right.
terms of the access, just mind blowing. And I love like the curated playlists that, I can go from jazz to lo-fi to,
Yeah,
classical, and it's all there at my fingertips. And
$10 a month or
yeah,
something. I don't.
yeah. When did you start using Spotify?
Well, I didn't. I started using Spotify when I actually used another service, Pandora,
Hmm.
earlier, but it's the same idea. But then now that Spotify has my podcast on, then now I listen to Spotify.
Yeah.
I like their style. I like how they do it better than I
Yeah.
like Pandora.
I love the curation aspect of it.
Mm.
And I think it's so interesting to me because with younger people, like my own kid, a lot of the collecting of music, it's back to physical collecting. So they really love to have the albums or the CDs. And to me, I'm like, I don't care. I'll lose it anyway. So I'd rather just have it all accessible on my phone. But I love the playlists that other people put together.
Oh,
Like I came across this playlist of vintage Russian music, and unfortunately, I think it disappeared, and I am just heartbroken because it was like all these like kind of Cold War era songs, from like war movies, and like some of them actually became little like mini like little TikTok hits. People were setting like videos to them, but really getting exposed. Like, and it was a very long playlist. It was like 21 hours that someone had put together. It was,
that is so impressive, isn't it? But it does I wanted to ask you about it. You moved here in the 6th grade, so your early years were spent in Moscow.
mm-hmm.
Now, I had a tenant one time he wasn't from Moscow. He was from, I don't know, one of the satellite countries. But he also moved in the 6th grade. And I noticed he didn't not have a Russian accent. Although I met his mother, and his mother really was Russian. I mean, Russian speaking. So tell me about how the accent thing, or how you learned to speak, or maybe you spoke English before you got here. I don't know. But how did that all work out?
So I actually went to a school in Moscow that did have quote unquote English emphasis, but it meant we had English like grammar classes. I don't think my pronunciation was particularly good when I moved to the States. The lore in the immigrant community is that if you move before you hit puberty, you can lose your accent. But I don't know how true it is, because I certainly know other people who moved around the same age as I did who do still have a significant
Sixth grade is
accent.
pushing puberty, too.
Yeah. So sometimes it does come through. Like, actually, now that I'm conscious of it, I'm paying a lot more attention, and probably it's more obvious. But some people hear it as if I'm from Minnesota or,
Minnesota.
from Minnesota. But somehow I managed to lose it. My parents certainly did not. And I remember my mom was I think she was in her 40s, maybe even 50s, and she was taking lessons from a friend in English pronunciation, like how to try to improve her accent. It wouldn't even probably occur to me to do that if I still had an accent. I just try to stick with it.
Well, I mean, I always love accents myself. I just think it's so great. I love to listen to people.
Yeah.
In Spain, having people from Spain speak English with me, I just like sit adoringly while they're talking to me, because I just think it's so great.
Well, my husband still has a very strong Norwegian accent.
Does he?
He's from Norway.
Does he? Oh, yeah. And I spent a couple of weeks on a vacation in Finland and got to, Finnish is a very difficult language.
Yeah, how was that?
Well, I loved Finland the way that it is, but it's, I don't know, it seemed very foreign. It seemed very foreign to me. It's not like exotic in terms of super sophisticated or anything. I mean, I don't mean that they aren't sophisticated, but it doesn't, you don't have that history of Roman culture and stuff. It's more, and I was in a rural town, small town.
Oh, wow.
So I just loved it, though. I had no idea that saunas were as big a deal as they are, but life centers around the sauna in Finland.
Fascinating.
It absolutely does. Everyone has. This one person I knew, he had a one-room apartment, studio apartment, but he had a sauna attached to his apartment. And he said, "Oh yeah, of course I have a sauna."
In Russia, we lived in this tiny 1-bedroom apartment. My parents and I, and we talked about putting a sauna in like this storage area. I mean, it was like, I think closet would be like overstating the size of this space. But we were like, yeah, maybe we could put a sauna in there. People were doing it. They were putting saunas in. I think it's like when you live in that deep, like bone-chilling cold, you have to stay warm somehow.
I think it is definitely related to that. I got to go to Russia one time before all this has happened. My in-laws took us on a river cruise from St. Petersburg to Moscow. And so we went through all these locks and these, the rivers and the lakes, and stuff. And we'd stop along the way at these little villages with 1,000-year-old wooden churches. And I was just so, I just thought it was incredible.
That's amazing. I never actually got to travel around Russia much. So
Mhm.
I spent my time in Moscow and then around Moscow, and then went to St. Petersburg once for like a couple days. But I really feel like I don't
You
have a
don't
good,
know Russia
yeah, I
very
don't
well.
know Russia.
Ah,
But a river cruise would be great because I have this weird like for locks. Like if I'm
I
next to
know what you
locks,
mean.
I just love
I know
locks.
what you mean. Well, you go to Panama anyway. And,
Yeah, I mean, the Panama Canal locks, I'm like mind blown. Like, can we just spend the day here watching the locks? So,
no, there is something fascinating
like,
about it.
yes.
Well, I was going to ask you about your memories of Russia and all that. And what are they? Are they spotty memories, or do you have like a consistent?
I think it's pretty consistent. I still speak the language, not
Hmm.
as much as I used to. I'm always on the lookout for a Russian friend, someone
Hmm.
that I can speak Russian with. But I definitely remember like the city. A lot of my memories are around my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who I just adored, Lydia. She was
Yeah.
amazing. My parents traveled a lot for work when I was growing up, so I spent a lot of time with her and around more of the extended family. Housing was such a problem there at the time. I remember like my parents were really lucky because they had this apartment, which I think was like it was for my mom, and then my dad lived there and I lived there, and it was, essentially 2 rooms.
Hmm.
But then my grandparents, they lived in a communalka, a communal flat.
Hmm.
So you share the space with people you're not related to. So there was a kitchen, and a bathroom that was shared with another lady and her daughter who had nothing to do with my family. They had a room of their own. And then my grandparents had 2 rooms, which they shared those rooms with my uncle, my aunt, and my cousin. So it was, and like people would show up from out of town, and they'd be like visiting Moscow and need a place to stay. And I just have the warmest memories of that communal apartment. Like it had such positive energy. There was always something happening. People were coming and going. And, um, coming from work late, and my grandma would be making hot dogs. For some reason, that's very clear in my mind,
Hot
is
dogs.
hot dogs, because I had a lot of skin problems as a kid, a lot of allergies, and so I was not allowed to have
Oh,
the
gee.
Soviet hot dogs.
Oh, gee.
And my uncle would come home and eat these hot dogs, and I would say, when I grow up, I want to be like Uncle Igor. I want to eat hot dogs with ketchup.
I love that story. Wow. Well, so where are the best hot dogs in Boulder then, would you say?
I don't actually eat that many hot dogs now, but I don't know. What would be, is Mustard's Last Stand?
I would say
It's a
mustard's
pretty
last
good
stand.
hot dog over there.
I like, because I, work out a lot. You call them cheat meals sometimes, but hot dog comes to my mind for a cheat meal sometimes. I don't eat them much at all, but there is something very alluring about them, I think.
So tell me about your relationship to working out and being in your body. I know you had your trainer on the podcast
Oh,
earlier.
I did. Yeah. Dan. I call him the jacked rabbi because he's got that beard and everything. Well, I worked out a long time. But I started when I was in my mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think partly it's because I had a gigantic father. And I always felt so small in relation to him. He was like 6'3", weighed 225 pounds, and just was a big, big guy. He was a nice guy. He was, but man, he just was like
Just a mountain of a man.
a mountain of a man. And so I think partly that's what inspired me. Also, I was kind of a nerdy kid. I was like a little scholar. I wore glasses and I did ski and hike and do stuff like that, but I wasn't really into team sports so
Mm-hmm.
much. Played tennis, but somehow I got it in my mind, well, I want to get bigger and I want to be stronger. And so I just started working out, and I've done it regularly ever since. And I really love going to the gym. I just love going to the gym. The thing that I think, a lot of people I mean, there's a lot of benefits to weight training. Not just that your muscles get big, but
Hmm.
there's a ton of benefits. And so some people do it, but you can just tell, oh, I hate this. I just hate this. And I wish that they could somehow enjoy it because it makes such a difference in their lives.
I am not very consistent about weights, but a person we both know, Rachel, she and I try to do weights together, and we call it getting ripped.
Well, sure,
So
absolutely.
she'll text me and she's like, "Hey, you want to get ripped on Saturday?"
I love
But
that.
I that's actually that makes it better because then we have like I feel like I have accountability, but also I have a buddy to go to and yap with because
Yeah.
I think I was much more committed to doing weight training when I had a trainer.
Well, I think that makes all the difference in the world because then, like, I'm good friends with Dan. I know him and his wife and his kid, and I know a lot about him. We share stories.
Yes.
And so it's also like this real feeling of community. And he owns his own gym, so like he knows all the people that are at the gym, and I know all the trainers and stuff. So it's really this fun community.
No, that's a huge part of it. For me, I like I told you, I wasn't a big like athletic kid.
Right.
I think the only team sport I enjoyed in high school was volleyball.
Oh, I had my finest sports experience playing volleyball. But go
Yeah.
ahead, tell me.
Well, I didn't do much with it because my parents are like, "Ah, focus on school, focus on school." But then in my I kind of did a little jogging here and there, and in my mid-30s, I got much more consistent about the jogging, and and the running, and for like the past year almost, I've been chasing this dream. I know all the runners listening, please don't laugh. We all have our own goals, but I really want to run a sub 25 5K, which for like a lady in her 40s who wasn't a college
Absolutely.
runner, like I feel like that's respectable. But I just have not been able to make it. So I did the Leprechaun 5K in Boulder like in March, and
Yeah.
it was like crazy weather. It was like 0 degrees and like windy and flurries, and um I ended up coming in at 25:25. I lost a few seconds because my shoe got untied.
Oh God.
So I was so close, but definitely not quite there. And then I did the Boulder this past weekend. Oh my God, Howard, I fell.
You
I
fell?
fell
How
at
far into the race were
like
you?
mile 4 in front of Casey, actually. No, we were
Oh,
talking about Casey. I
oh
literally,
man.
my foot got caught in like a little
Oh,
crevice on the
geez.
road. And yeah, my knees are not pretty. Thus the long skirt today, hiding the scabs. But, I even called my family because I was like, I can't even quite stand. But a couple minutes later, I was able to get back up and I finished. It was a sad time, but
Uh,
I got through it. So,
well,
you
I'm
know.
glad to hear that there's a good ending to that story. Well, okay, so here I have a claim to fame with older Boulder too.
Yes, let's
It's a
hear it.
pretty funny one because I used to run all the time the Boulder, and we had some friends from Denver who came up, and they had 4 kids, and we had 2, and so we would all run. Start off together. And I ended up eventually somehow running with their 8-year-old son. And I had to stop and tie his shoes 2 times, and he came in third in his age range. So and my volleyball claim to fame, I don't know really what happened, but I got in the zone and I managed to hit the volleyball right at the same person 21 times. And it was just like a blowout volleyball.
Wow. That is
But
wild.
they
When
would
was this?
stop. They would call a timeout and sort of try to distract me, but there was no distracting me. I don't know. I just got into that scene, and it was just the greatest
Do
thing.
you still play?
I have sort of a shoulder problem and stuff, so I don't. I usually just stick to weights and hiking. And I didn't go snowshoeing last winter.
Because there's no
There was
snow.
no snow, but ordinarily I'd be out doing some snowshoeing as well.
Yeah.
But those are and yard work, which I'm getting sort of tired of doing now.
So, like, obviously, we talk about all these benefits, right,
Mhm.
from working out. Like, is there for you, is it more about the body or is it the mental component or is it both?
Well, I mean, it's sort of a personal story, but it has to do with my divorce partly. Like it changed my perspective on it because, well, I don't want to get into too much detail, but it she ended up making me feel like I was kind of like a uh, nerdy guy that really wasn't very sexy and wasn't very much fun and boring. And
Sounds like she needed to get her eyes checked.
well, I think it was projection is what I think it was. But anyway, it really like her opinion of me was very important, and I had to disabuse myself of that her opinion was important. And so that sort of inspired me further to like, Dan, he says, well, if you want to look better, like here's an exercise you can do to improve your outer bicep and to look broader. So, okay, I'm doing it. So I do.
You'll teach me the exercise later.
Okay, I will. But so I guess it's a mixed thing. I definitely, I don't have to take any medications. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't eat cholesterol. I don't have any prescriptions I have to take, and I feel good. So, and I'm 76, and by the time you're 76, people start to have problems.
Oh, 100%. I mean, my parents are in their mid-70s, and my dad had what should have been a minor surgery, but then it's like one thing after another, and now it's 2 months, and he hasn't recovered, and there's been a number of things, and now he's really weak and deconditioned, and no, it's, I mean, you're doing amazing.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I mean, I know I could get sick. It's not like something could happen, but I'm enjoying it right now that I still have good health.
Well, you've got more reserve too. I think that's the one thing with the workouts is that, yeah, we can still get hurt or we can get sick, but we have more reserve to recover.
I think immune systems start to get a little weaker as you get older. I noticed, like, I went for, I'd say, 8 years without ever having a cold or anything, but I got 2 colds last year.
Oh, wow.
So, sort of like, I don't want to make too much of it, but it's like, I wonder if that's.
They do dysregulate. It's weird. We haven't talked about pets yet.
Right.
But immune system wise, I have this elderly cat that adopted us. He just moved in. He was my neighbor's cat. He's amazing. His name is Stanley. But he is like, it turns out that as cats get older, their immune systems dysregulate. And so he is an itchy cat. He scratches at himself and rips out his fur. And so he has to be on steroids because of his immune system.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hope that doesn't happen to me.
You don't turn into an itchy cat.
My hair is getting a little thinner. I thought of that too. I used to have this black, bushy hair and stuff. And I'm lucky I'm not bald. I still have my hair, but I notice that the thinning of the hair is
Yeah, I think I lost like half my hair since
really?
Actually right around COVID time.
Really?
Yeah, I definitely used to have a lot more hair. All those hormones and all those aging changes, they get us all.
Okay, so we have a few more minutes, and I want to just touch on you being a neurosurgeon, because that's sort of like, that's a big deal job to have. And how you decided to do it, what it was like while you were doing it, and why you decided to retire from it.
So I went to medical school as a non-traditional medical student. So I was already a little bit older. I was 27, I think, when I started. But I was immediately attracted to neurosurgery because I really loved the neurologic system. I think it almost ran in my family. It seems like my grandmother was a psychiatric nurse for a long time. My uncle, the one who was eating the hot dogs, he was a neurologist in Russia. Interestingly, he's now an entrepreneur in Philadelphia.
Really? Oh, wow.
So he doesn't practice anymore either. So I think my aunt was also a neurologist. So there was a lot of neuro kind of conversation, and so a lot of fascination with that system. And I think that's really what was my initial attraction. And looking at different fields that touched that, I actually thought I would probably go into pediatric neurology rather than neurosurgery. But with neurology, especially now it's a little different, but 15 plus years ago, there just weren't as many interventions. Like you'd make the diagnosis and then it was just sad. There wasn't a lot that you could offer.
Right.
That's changed. That's definitely changed somewhat. With neurosurgery, it was more action oriented. You could do things and try to fix things. And I think that was my attraction to it. So going to
fighting evil.
Fighting evil. fighting evil. And I actually ended up focusing in neurotrauma in my own practice, which is really difficult. You see a
Car
lot of car
accident.
accidents, a lot of sad stories. So,
How about
yeah,
athletes? How about like football players who get, they that ever come your way?
not to me personally,
Mhm.
but yeah,
It's a
definitely,
big deal.
definitely part of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and traumatic brain injury, lasting effects of that, whether it's mild or extremely severe, to where
Mhm.
people really never recover their cognitive function or ability to interact with the world. Really, really devastating stories. Very difficult lifestyle. Call wise. Being on
Yeah.
call for days at a time.
Yeah.
Very limited sleep at times, both in training and outside of training. It's a difficult lifestyle. So
Was your decision to retire based at all on because your daughter is leaving you, or is that just coincidence?
I think it's maybe somewhat related. I think I'm still reflecting a lot on that whole
Mhm.
story. It feels a little bit like divorce.
Yeah.
So it's a
Uh-huh.
big emotional separation.
Yeah. Huh.
So yeah,
Okay. Well, I can tell it's an emotional
it is very emotional.
experience as well.
Maybe once I process it all, we can have another conversation about pivots and
Well, I
when
remember
I'm
when I went off to college, it was at CSU, and my parents didn't really want me to go to CU because they wanted me to go to the land grant university
uh-huh.
because they were from these old pioneer ranching families. So that's where you send your sons to college,
Mhm.
was so CSU. And I was like, if I bought it, I guess I could have gone to CU, but I liked CSU. I was happy to
Mhm.
go there. But I remember they drove me up and they dropped me off, unpacked and headed back home.
So, land grant universities. So tell me about your experience with that, because Alex is going to land grant university,
Oh, it's
UC
Davis?
Davis.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting.
And, focus on agriculture. It's interesting. It seems to be rejuvenating somewhat now, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of excitement in AgTech. I myself am doing work in that space now. Um, so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I guess I had those deep roots in ranching. We were the city cousins. My parents bought a business and lived in town in Durango, so we were the city cousins. But we would go frequently on weekends to my grandparents' ranch, or my aunt and uncle had a ranch as well. But I was never myself. Like my parents decided they did not want to. They had the opportunity to take over it was actually my great great grandparents' ranch that my grandparents had, and they had the opportunity, but they turned it down. They said, "We want to modernize our lives. We want to be a part," because the United States was changing. It was changing from a rural-based society to a more urban-based society. And I think the 50s was a big transition time. Right after World War II is when a lot of things shifted. So to me, the Ags, like I didn't want to be called the Aggies. This was sort of like embarrassing. And we were the Rams by that time, but recently it had been Colorado A&M. And so the Aggies was the name. So I was glad we were the Rams, and the Rolling Stones came one time when I was I think a sophomore in college. And so, oh man, we've hit the big time at CSU. So I was sort of like trying to move away. Okay, yeah, we're, ag school background, but we do other things as well. That's sort of like where I was with that.
Well, Alex is excited to be an Aggie at Davis. So, but I think it's interesting because of how agriculture is likely to develop now, right? Some young people don't want to come
Absolutely.
back to the farms, but
As,
at the same time, there is a sort of rejuvenation and excitement as I think some of the science and the tech is firing up more. I'm doing some work in that space, as I mentioned, actually, with our
mhm.
friend Stefan Detroit.
Yeah, yeah.
So we are helping AgriWater, which is a company out of South Africa, introduce their water
I
pre-processing
see.
product
So
to
that's
the
what you
US.
guys are always
That's what we're always
talking about.
talking about.
Okay, gotcha,
Yeah. So
gotcha.
There's a really unique product, a way of processing water prior to irrigation. There's some other applications as well that makes water essentially more like rain. The scientific
Oh,
underpinning to it
interesting.
is it's an advanced oxidation process using a
Interesting.
triple technique with UV and
Wow.
ozone and hydrogen peroxide. And it really can improve a lot of problems, but the key one is soil compaction. And that's what we're seeing a lot
Uh-huh.
in the US lands. In a lot of, like, 22%, I think, of crop lands in the
Wow.
US are affected by soil compaction.
Wow.
And a product like that can really improve it and improve farming. But it's also cool to be talking about the tech and the science and the potential to holistically influence the system, actually from a health perspective. And we talk about the
Right.
idea of one health, where if the health of the human is actually affected by the health of the plant, the health of the animal,
Right.
and the health of the environment.
Wow.
So
Well, I'm not surprised that this is a very sophisticated thing that you and Stefan are doing. I'm not surprised at all. Well, we have come to the end here.
oh wow, the
And
hour just flew
it's always a
by.
surprise that it goes so quickly, I think. But what a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
I've been delighted to spend this time with you, Howard.
Thank you. Maybe we can do it again sometime.
Yes.
Okay. That having people on more than once, I think, is a cool idea.
It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.